welcome back to the Allegheny Northern in N-scale, and this is the July 2025 layout update. Going to be a brief one because July was very busy and there wasn't a whole lot of modeling time. Plus, I wrapped up a commission, which you will see photographs of here very soon. But let me start off with more DCC advice, and that is don't get lazy. And let me explain to you why. So, I have a Scale Trains GEVO here on the programming track, and that's not important. What I want to do is show you what it looks like when you go into the function mapping. And it's very important when you are speed matching locomotives that you're very careful with what you copy and paste from locomotive to locomotive. And in this case, I'm going to go specifically to the lights, okay? And what I found out is if you look here and you see that under various functions, you've got different auxiliaries that are running, okay? And these happen to be the ditch lights, okay? And if you take a locomotive that has ditch lights and you copy that over to a locomotive that doesn't have ditch lights, it's not nearly as bad as if you accidentally go the other way with it. So let me show you what I mean here. So I'm going to take this locomotive off, and I know you're not seeing the locomotive, but with the locomotive that I'm putting on the track is really not important. Just know that this one has ditch lights, and you can see here that depending on whether you're forward or reverse, it has a logical setup here, so it knows which ditch lights are supposed to run, which ones are not supposed to run, and then you can further modify it by going into the function outputs and seeing whether or not that locomotive is set correctly for alternating ditch lights, stuff like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and take another decoder reading here. All we're going to do is read it. We are not going to save anything, and we're going to let this thing rock and roll. Okay, now, while it's reading that decoder, this happened. I was trying to speed match an Atlas model with a Scale Trains model, and I just, having previously matched a whole bunch of Scale Trains locomotives together by simply copying and pasting, I was like, oh, this will be easy. But if you'll notice here under F6, there's absolutely nothing. So what I did was I grabbed a locomotive that looked very much like this, and I copied it onto a locomotive that had ditch lights, and I think most of you will know what happened. Yep, ditch lights didn't work. So I spent the better part of 2 hours going through and finding function by function by function which light was working, which one wasn't. What you can't really look at the decoder, at least I couldn't, and tell where it was because it was a decoder board, right? It didn't have like wires to it, so I couldn't tell which function was which function. And I guess I could have pulled out a schematic, and in retrospect that probably would have been easier, but I was in full-on panic mode. Here's the other catch: the sound file that would have updated all of this and put it all back was not available on ESU's website. So yeah, I had to do it manually. Now, good news is the locomotive is restored. It is running the way it should. And you would think that you could just hit a simple reset CV8 to 8, or on this particular, you do have a reset decoder function. Yeah, those didn't work. So, once again, very important when you copy from item to item, make sure you are copying correctly. And honestly, unless you're going from a Scale Trains to a Scale Trains or an Atlas to an Atlas, and even Atlas to Atlas, I scanned, read multiple Atlas models, and they were not all the same. So my recommendation is before you go in and make any modifications, save a copy of the file somewhere. That way you have the sounds, that way you have the speed programming, and if you make a mistake, you can't always go backwards. So take that as a lesson that you don't want to spend the time fixing it. It's not really all that fun, and Well, it just teaches you don't be an idiot. So, okay, so we did that this month. Okay, something else that we did this month, not exciting, but man, does it make a difference. You're going to notice that right here we've got these little jumper wires on our PSX, XAR, or SC, whatever all those letters are. And those modify the trip rate for the circuit breaker. And I was having intermittent issues with the circuit breaker tripping and throwing the turnout when it shouldn't. The only time it should is when you actually complete the reverse loop and you get back to the brake and the rail joints. Well, in this case, it was tripping at random locations around the loop, causing the train to derail because the switch would open up halfway through the train. So by making those two jumps from J1 to J2 and then J3 to J4, you increase the amp trip setting to, I think it's like 3.8 amps or something like that. It starts off, I think, as like 1.9. You can get it, or 0.06 or something like that, or 0.09. I can't remember what they were, but it starts out really low. You can increase it to like 1.6, and then it jumps up to that 3.4, 3.8, or whatever that number is. So I have it on the max setting. I will tell you that it works amazing. I have not had a false trip since. I had 5 of these things that needed to be upgraded. Wait a minute, no, 6. 2 on the lower side on this end, 2 on that end, and then 2 on the upper. Yeah, that's 6. So I did that, and the wires are simply set in there. I've got a piece of, the wires folded back on itself, so it can't move out of there. I just put a piece of Captain tape on the back just to secure it. You can see it hanging off the end there. It's not a pretty installation, but it does fix all of my problems. Okay, so I think everybody watched the previous video, 2 videos ago, about the DCC system limitations that I've uncovered. And you guys all pretty much got to the same point that I got to. And that was, you can either go to advanced consisting and go through that hassle and rigmarole to set them up, or you can just get a bigger system, because the DCS52, which is the Digitrack Zephyr Express, is just a little too basic for the size of the layout and the complexity of things you're trying to do. Yeah, I kind of knew that was the answer, and I kind of knew I was going to have to do that, and I was kind of putting it off for as long as I could. But I guess we've reached that point, and it's time to upgrade, so that will be coming soon. Unfortunately, that caused me to spend quite a lot of time this month just working on getting these decoders back up and running so that I can run trains. I'll run trains here for you in just a little bit. Okay, I have traded the tripod for a less steadier version with my hands here, just to take you along the port scene. Started working on all of the ocean and bay area plaster work. So this is the cloth and the initial plastic plaster base, and got all of that prepped. Now this is, I know it's hard to see, but that's going to represent sheet piling. And down here I've started playing with some ideas. So I'm going to have to eventually smooth this out and get this, right now it's not, pieces are just kind of cut-offs. But the ocean bed is going to come up to here, okay, and that'll all get painted. And then we've got what will be the intermodal yard. So this is 3/16, it's just the tube shape. I had a combination of Plastruct and evergreen pieces, and so they're under here. They're also running behind here to provide support for this. Okay, and then this is just 0.04 styrene sheet on top, and this is actually 0.6 here in the rails. And as long as that's laying flat, it actually the cars run over that without any issue. Just wanted to show you what that looks like there. So that's what the intermodal yard is going to look like. As long as I don't catch a raised piece here. Let me just show you as this slides over here. So that's what that'll look like once we get that done. Now, what I don't know if I'm going to do, I don't know if I'm going to actually paint the surface, or whether I'm going to use a decal type method to get the road surface and the wear stripes that I want. So I've got to think through that. This was just me kind of playing with some shapes here, figuring out what I want to do. But if you look at the end here, you can see the pieces that are holding this all in place, and that's just giving me a very lightweight surface to work off of, and it's a lot better than trying to get plaster, which gets in everything, ruins the track. It just makes a mess of everything. So what I did is I went through here, made sure this track was nice in alignment, filed any joints that weren't in good shape, and then just sort of started working my way through that. Now, the plaster work continues. This is going to be a concrete wall here from where this, so right here from where this beam is, okay? So that's just a simple H shape against that sheet piling. And then that's going to be a concrete area there. It's just going to be a concrete wall that's going to turn back into a sheet piling wall. That kind of goes along here and then down towards where the future sort of harbor-ish scene is going to be. Now, I'm not worried about filling this in with plaster, but I did want to get enough plaster sort of wrapped up the cove here so that when I pour the realistic water, I've got a backstop in here and it's not going to roll out the back and then down onto this layout. Now, I will be covering this with plastic just to make sure that there's no leaks, but we'll get into that at another time. And then this is just simply, styrene pieces. There's 2 different sizes on here, or 3 different sizes, and I used it where I thought it made the most sense. And I don't know that I'm going to have any more of it, because what I'm probably going to do is cut this down and sort of have this as a gradient here. And then even around here, I'm probably going to make this a lot of riprap and make a little island in there. So I don't think I'm going to have any more sheet piling. And then I'm also going to sort of grade this out a little bit too. So yeah, just make it a little more, kind of blend the man-made and the natural together. So this is where I spent a little bit of time working on getting that all done and put together. So I'd like to tell you that I got more done this month than that, but I did not get more done this month than that. I lost a long weekend to the 4th of July and the festivities there. And then I lost 2 more weekends this month to some time out of the office, so to speak. So I did not have, 3 of my weekends were spent otherwise indisposed and not in the model railroading room. And now that we're moving into August, that's going to be a little bit different. I've got some house projects that I'm working on, and those are going to take some time. But to be honest with you, it's been so freaking hot and so just rainy here. I don't know if I'm going to get to them or not. So depending on what the weather decides to do will depend on how much train time I have. And then there you go. You can hear that the automatic switch is working just fine. Honestly, I was not having any issues with this particular train. The issues I was having were all on the scale trains locomotives. For some reason, they seem to be drawing more current. And here's Rexy for everybody. So as silly as this comment sounds, I am actually going to be getting back to modeling, and you can see that I'm starting to expand my scenery. I am working on making some repairs to damaged scenery, and I'm trying to resist the urge to spend all of my time just running trains through what I have so that I can actually get some of this other work done, because what ends up happening is I come home from work and I'm tired and I don't want to do anything, so I end up just watching trains go around and don't make any forward progress. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time working on some trains or some modeling, and I'm going to leave the trains parked for a little bit, as much as I can anyway, and get something done here in August. So, yep, that was a pretty brief update, but that's what we got done in the month of July. So the next video here will probably also be a relatively short one, just as I'm getting caught up on everything. Might take you on a a little bit of a brainstorming session here as to what I'm thinking about for some upcoming scenes. So stay tuned for that. All right, we'll run through the snow here, and then we'll see you next weekend.